Okay, so here's our pins. Now there's just a simple little setting to actually change how this ball affects that object right there. First thing I want to do, however, is get up here to Dynamics and say Clear Solver. Okay, and before I do that, notice that there's all this blue down here in the timeline, and remember, I'm in an animation layout. Okay, we want to clear that baked solver, okay, that pre-recorded solver. So we're going to clear that. We're going to go back here to the ball, go to keyframe 40, pull that back down, create a key at 40, and then back here at 0 where it was, create a key. Okay, so there we are, kind of back to where we were. Now for the ball, under the rigid body dynamics, if you go up under collision, if the static values are higher and the dynamic, these are coefficient values, and you calculate this out, what that's going to do is give you that larger area around there, which is how I had it. Okay, let's put our solver back on. When you clear the solver, it actually turns that off so you can work with your scene. And you need to do that if you want to re-keyframe something. Okay, so you see how that just barely touched it, didn't even go near it, and it hit the pin? So what we want to do is keep these at 0 for this particular scene. And this may change depending on the type of scene you're doing. But in this particular case, we want a direct contact like that. Okay, and then we can bake it again. The next thing I want to do is select each of these and make sure that they also have these values set to 0. And I'm going to increase the mass to about 4 for that first pin, and let's calculate again and hit the play button. And that should have a little more weight to it. Alright, so now I'm going to do that to the other ones. We'll take these other pins and increase their mass. You can also calculate mass center, and it will know where the center of that object is. We're pretty good on this for the way the ball is hitting it, but let's say the center was down at the bottom, it would actually calculate a little bit differently, and the ball would hit it to give it the right amount of rotation. So you can do that for all of these. We'll increase the mass on each of these. Calculate. And it just looks at that center pivot point. All right, and once we have this done, let's save out this scene, and then let's rewind, go to Dynamics, and let's bake the solver, and let it calculate out. And now they really knock around by changing their center and their mass. And they seem just to be kind of hopping around. Okay? That's what happens when you have increased mass values. The gravity is pulling them down, so they're actually just kind of, something's trying to pull them. Okay? That's what the mass will do on those. So I'm going to change these back to 1. I think the rotational is okay. So all we want to do is just create a little bit of a drag when they bounce around. Okay, so come down to the next one, to the aerodynamics, and you have drag, impact, lift, linear. Well, let's just do the first couple. Let's put a drag of about 60, and this will give the appearance of a little more weight. But we've already made that solver, so let's clear it. Let's clear the solver, turn this back on. Create a keyframe for this guy at 40. Let's rewind and hit the play button. Nice hit right there, nice and direct. And now it pushes the pins. Okay. So that first one's good. So if you look, just a few various settings, and you really can make big changes to the way everything reacts, from calculating the center of mass to the weight to the drag and so on. So if I put drag on the rest of these, and then you can play with the amount of impact, the lift, linear values, angular values, and so on. And really all you need to do is don't bake it until you're really, truly done with it and ready to save your scene. Keep the scene simple, like we have here. Save them before you hit the play button, because the more it has to calculate, the slower it's going to be. But now we have a direct hit, and now they're all bouncing off of each other really well. Now I probably need to go in and redo that center mass for each of these. If we leave these all back at 0, you'll see that they can just land right on their feet the way they were. Okay, so that's what each of these different values do, and you can make quite a scene pretty easily. When you have multiple objects like this, as I mentioned earlier, as far as setting up the scene, we kind of needed to, the way we built it. But if you're going to do one from scratch, go ahead and make one pin, set up the dynamics for that pin, and then make it the clones, put them in place, and then you'll work a little bit more efficiently than I am here setting all these up. Okay, so I changed their center back, and now they're not colliding with the floor, spinning around, and everything's looking pretty cool. So you can put a back wall there so they can bounce some more. You can come back in here, maybe add a little more mass to them, put a little more drag, impact, and just change each of the values for these. Okay, so that's just a pretty basic overview for the hard body, rigid body dynamics. And when I say that, that's really all you might ever need. It doesn't go a whole lot further usually, simply because in my 17, 20 years of doing 3D and production experience, most dynamics you're going to need, unless you're doing movies, which is a whole other thing, most industrial type animations, household animations, architectural animations, if you need dynamics, are going to be pretty much, collisions, falls, gravity, and situations like this where objects need to interact. So I'm going to save out this scene. I'll bake it so it's there, and then you can load that up. Let's move on to another one, and I'll talk a little bit about soft body dynamics.